Hello, PE. It's good to see you again. Well, at least you can see me. Thank you for all your contribution on the discussion post. It's been really good to see how you've been able to summarize how to treat a bleeding casualty or a casualty that's in shock, and also hear your experiences of how you've had to cope with asthma or cope with someone you know, whether it be a family member or a friend who suffers from asthma. And asthma is a common affliction that is suffered by a lot of young people, and it's quite common, as you've read in the article. And so it's just good to hear your experiences from that, though I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. Over this term, we've looked at the basic principles of first aid, and what a great opportunity it's been to be able to study a course without having to get a formal qualification for it, but be able to learn the processes of first aid within PDHPE and how to look after your health. I've already had some reports from students in our class of how they really enjoyed the course content and how it's helped them to learn how to apply first aid in their day-to-day life, which is really exciting. It's come to that time of the term where we give out our assessment tasks, and this is your assessment task for this term, where you have the opportunity to complete or make up rather a first aid handbook or a first aid video. So you have an option. So I'm going to go through the assessment task with you over this podcast. You can put me on pause and print out the assessment task if you would like and go through it with me. Alternatively, you can just listen to this podcast, and if there's anything that you're unsure of or you think you need to go back over again, you can feel free to replay, sorry. Okay, so, and we'll also have a discussion post this week. If you have any further questions, someone may have asked the same question, so we'll make sure we have that discussion post up so you can ask any questions, just so you can get the best possible marks. All right, assessment task notification, information and notification. So this is the third assessment task, first aid handbook or video. So it's issued today, and it's due in exactly 2 weeks' time. So this is your task. In this task, you have a choice to create a first aid manual or a first aid video that explains basic first aid. So what is a first aid manual? I'm so glad you asked. Well, basically, a first aid manual can be something like your own handbook, the ones that we've been working through in class. This itself is also a handbook. You can feel free to write all your information on a Word document, even if it's on A4 pages, and we can imagine that it's a bind on the side, and that's your manual. You don't necessarily have to have this size as your manual. If you choose to do a manual, you need to make sure that you include pictures and very clear instructions on how to apply these basic first aid principles. Alternatively, you have the option to do a video. If you'd like to do a video, it basically looks like some of the video samples that I've been uploading on Schoology, how you've watched a video on how to put someone in a recovery position, and you've also watched a video on how to treat bleeding or treat someone who's undergoing shock. So that's what the videos look like, except you need to film yourself or a family member, and you need to have a voiceover, and make sure your instructions are quite clear and explicit. And let's continue. Your manual needs to be appealing to the eye and easy to read. So again, just pictures, good headings, and subtitles, and logically sequenced. This is an individual task, and you'll need to submit it either via the Dropbox on Schoology or in a hard copy to your teacher before the due time on the due date stated above. Unfortunately, I had to deduct marks from students last term who submitted their work late. So if you know you won't be able to submit your assessment task on time, it's very important that you get in contact with me as soon as possible so we can arrange an extension. Alternatively, just ensure that you know the due date and you make sure that you send your assessment task before the due date. In your manual or video, you need to include the following information on the following areas. So the doctor's ABCD procedure, how to put a casualty in the recovery position, and when a first aider should do this. managing a bleeding casualty, managing a casualty in shock, managing a casualty who has asthma, managing a casualty who has been bitten by a snake. You need to have a trusted internet site for information on first aid and training. So that's for your research. You need to make sure that you reference appropriate websites. And you need to also include a reference list, which is separate to your manual or video, that gives in detail where you got that information from. Referencing is a very important tool in school and even beyond school. It's very important that we acknowledge the people who have written this information, and so we need to learn to reference properly. So I'll make a separate podcast on referencing if you need extra help with referencing. These are some of the things that you'll be assessed on. You will be assessed on your ability to communicate first aid knowledge in a clear and concise manner. That means that your instructions need to be explicit and it needs to be concise. So you don't need to waffle on extra information that isn't relevant, but just clear instructions. You need to plan and design a creative first aid manual video incorporating a number of design elements. That includes pictures, that includes demonstrations, in any way that can make your video or manual more appealing. Identify an internet site that has direct relevance to first aid, to the first aid handbook or video. So making sure that you're referencing appropriate websites. To be fair to class members, all students must hand in their assessment on time on the due date, even if they're absent from school. Now that doesn't apply to you too much because you're all doing this via distance education, but it's absolutely important that you upload your assessment task before on the due date, just to make it fair for everyone. If you think you have difficulty completing the assignment on time, you must contact your teacher at least 3 days before the due date to discuss your problem and work on a solution. If you happen to be away at residential or other on a due date, you must submit it via the assessment Dropbox on Schoology by 5 p.m. on the due date. Late submissions will result in a deduction of marks as outlined in your diary. Okay, so this is the marking criteria, and this is what I'm really looking for to get you the best possible marks. So I'm looking for a clear presentation of your work. So your information is presented clearly, succinctly, and in a logical sequence, and so it's easy to read. Highly detailed information on the management steps required in the manual video for all elements identified in the task description. So all of those different elements, including the doctor's ABCD acronym, treating shock, treating bleeding, treating asthma, the recovery position, and the snake bite, all need to be included in your manual. You cannot select just 3 of them or 2 of them or 5 of them. You need to do all of them. You will be marked on how well you execute an excellent quality, comprehensive and appealing manual or video. It's important that you actually reference the websites that demonstrates that you've done background research, that you don't have any grammatical errors, and your reference list is included. Your student handbook also has all the information that you need for this assessment task. Should you take information from the handbook itself, you just need to put on your reference list student handbook on first aid. But I'll have another podcast on that. I hope that information is quite clear. If you have any questions, please upload your questions on the discussion post. But you can take the rest of this lesson just to consider and think about what you might do for this assessment task. Catch up on any work that needs to be done from the residentials that you're away from last week. And yeah, so if you have any questions, just let me know. But I'm looking forward to seeing all of your great work, all of your manuals or videos if you choose. And if you need any extra help or something's not coming clear to you, please clarify it with me. I'm looking forward to see the results from this assessment task. See you next time. Bye.